Okay, so in this particular lecture, we're going to talk about divisibility. Clear? Divisibility of integers. Divisibility of integers. Okay, this will be a lecture on number theory, where we will be covering divisibility, division algorithm, Euclid's division algorithm, uh, prime numbers. Under prime numbers, we will have Mersenne primes, Fermat primes, Wilson theorem, uh, and so on. We will also be understanding a little bit of modulus arithmetic. So these will be the few things we will be covering, and we will also be talking about the well ordering principle throughout the lecture, because it is very important one. So divisibility of integers. So the basic symbol of divisibility is given as d straight bar n. So this symbol actually indicates that d divides n. Clear? This symbol basically means that d divides n. Uh, so now, wow, basically the thing is that, see, suppose when d divides n, so we can write n of n in the form n equals to dk. Clear? Where k will basically be a both d and k will basically be a factor of n. Got it? And you can also call k as the quotient of this particular division. Okay, I guess you people already know this particular thing, that any number, any integer can be written on the form qd plus r, where q is the quotient and r is the remainder. Okay, so if a number n is divisible by d, then that basically implies that r equals to 0, that is the remainder becomes 0. Okay, also both q and d actually is uh, follows this particular inequality when n is not equals to 0, क्योंकि अगर n 0 है तो either of them will equal 0. Yeah, either of them or both can also equal 0. Both should not actually equal 0, either of them should actually equal 0. Clear? Okay. So there are a few properties of divisibility. First thing first, any positive integer, or specifically not positive integer, you can call it any integer. Okay, you can also specify d as any integer. It is d belongs to the set z, any integer divides 0. Clear? Next, 0 cannot divide any integer. 0 cannot divide any integer. You cannot divide any integer by 0. Okay, that will basically give you an indeterminate form. Clear? Okay. Third point is that 1 can divide any integer. 1 can divide any integer. Fourth is that any integer can divide itself. Any integer can divide itself. Now if you want to see a proof of this particular statement, see, you need to prove each and every mathematical statement. Okay, you also need to prove 8 times 0 is equals to 0. That is also a very much important proof in mathematics. So don't underestimate statements. You need to prove each and every one of them. So n divides n can be easily proved by n is equals to n times 1 plus 0. So both n and 1 are satisfying this inequality. Remainder is 0. Thus n divides n. Clear? Okay. Fifth, if some integer n divides 1, then that actually means that either n is equals to 1 or n is equals to minus 1. Clear? N is equals to minus 1. If there exists any integer n which divides 1, then either n equal to 1 or n equal to minus 1. Clear? Sixth property says that you know, d divides n and d divides m. This implies that d divides nms plus nt, okay, for all st belonging to integers. Clear? For all st belonging to integers. Acha, the reason behind this is basically, see, under modular arithmetic you will learn this particular thing, or you can tell it in this manner. See, uh, see, d divides n means n is of the form dk, so ns will be of the form dks. Similarly, sorry, I guess it was m, so m. Clear? Similarly, nt will be of the form d, so k, let us have this ls, okay, sorry, t. So if you add them, so ms plus nt equals to d times ks plus lt. Now ks and lt both are integers, okay, because k is individual and integer, l is individual and integer, s is an integer, t is an integer. Product of integers are integers and addition of integers are also integers, so these two basically form a integer actually. Therefore this is an integer, and hence we can say that, so d divides this. Clear? Acha, these sort of combinations of integers are called linear combination, okay, they are called linear combination of m and n. Got it? If you have some, if you have two integers m and n, and you form a new integer of this particular form, ms plus nt, where s and t are integers also, so this formed integer is called a linear combination of m and n. Okay, there is a lemma called Bezout's lemma, which is, solely describes the arithmetic of linear combinations. Clear? Next thing says that, okay, so this will be, I guess, number 7. So d divides n and n divides m implies that d divides m. Clear? Acha, let me say one more thing. See, this relation is actually, if you consider divisibility, or this particular, basically suppose you have a relation a r b equals to, let's say, a divides b. Okay, a r b, let r be a relation between two integers a and b such that a divides b is this is the relation defined by r. Clear? So basically r is reflexive here, it is reflexive here, and here you find that r is a transitive too. Okay, see, what was transitivity? ARB BRC implies ARC, so this is transitivity. Okay, so we can prove this statement quite easily. See, d divides n means n is of the form dk. Acha, n divides m, that means m is of the form nt, that now n is of the form dk, so you can put this value, so dkt, this is particular integer, so d divides m. Clear? So transitivity is also followed. Okay, now what happens is that symmetric property is not followed here. Clear? That is, d divides n will not implies n divides t. So okay, unless both are 1, unless d is also 1, n is also 1. Clear? Or both are -1, or both are some sort of negative positive 1, or you can call it like this. Okay, or both are equal, or both are equal. Equality can also be judged by this particular relation. If both are equal, then you have a condition that basically this condition is satisfied, but symmetric property is not considered by this relation generally for all integers, so we cannot define this as an equivalence relation. I was just not trying to confuse you people by saying those terms are reflexive, transitive, just to make you people think that can it be an equivalence relation or not. So it is not an equivalence relation. The next is a very important property, that is the cancellation property. What is the cancellation property? So basically what happens is that uh, a times d, suppose this divides a times n, this implies d divides n. This is also very pretty much easy to understand. So an is equals to adk. By left cancellation law you can cancel these two, right? So n is equals to dk. You can also divide 1 by n both sides to judge the left cancellation law. Basically n divide, so this means basically that d divides n. Clear? This property, I guess this is the ninth property, okay, or eighth, no, ninth property. So this is mandatory to write that a is not equals to 0, because if a equals to 0, then you will be getting an indeterminate form. Clear? Okay. One more thing, and this is a very important property, that if d n both belong to the set of positive integers, if d and n both belong to the set of positive integers and d divides n, then d must also always be less than equal to n. Now let me tell you the reason behind this. It is pretty much easy to understand. See, if n is equals to dk, we are telling both d and n are positive. Clear? Now see, so d if greater than n, if d is greater than n, then dk will be greater than n if k is positive, because k cannot be negative. K cannot be negative, because if k is negative, then n becomes negative. N cannot be negative, so k must be positive. Okay, and k is also an integer. We are talking about integers, so keep that in mind. So dk will always be greater than n, so this condition is not satisfied. Clear? So d can never be greater than n actually. Got it? Okay. This, from this condition you can have one more thing to understand. That was in the point 2, I guess, where I told that 0 cannot divide any n. Okay. Basically this statement is partially correct and partially wrong. How can we judge its correctness? Basically from this particular mathematical structure, that n is equals to dk. See, if d is equals to 0, n is equals to 0, putting d equal to 0, n equal to 0, so we can basically here say that if 0 divides n, then n must be equals to 0. Clear? But some n getting divisible by 0 also has this symbol, which, see, if you are dividing something, then you will be getting a quotient if it is divisible. So basically some n over p always has a quotient if n is divisible by p, and this k must be an integer. Now if both n is 0 and p is 0, so 0 over 0 is equals to k. This statement is not also correct. You cannot have a fixed positive integer which is a quotient of this division. Okay, so this statement is partially correct and partially wrong because of this sort of a fallacy in the throwing of the statement. But you can take it into you can consider it to be true if you take this particular structure into consideration, that n is equals to dk. So if d equals to 0, n equals to 0. Got it? Okay. One more thing. So this is not a property actually. So if 2 divides n, where n is an integer, so n is said to be even. Okay, even, or also called to be having even parity. Okay, and if not, then it is said to be odd. Okay, so that's why even numbers are of the form this, and odd numbers are of the form this. Got it? Clear? Okay, so some more things. If d divides a, okay, or let me write it in a different manner that will look a bit more mathematical actually. So d divides a implies that d divides mod of a. What is the reason behind this? The reason behind is that basically d divides a implies d divides minus a. Let me tell you why. See, if n is equals to dk, multiplying minus 1 on both sides, you get that minus a is equals to d times minus k. Now k when belongs to the set of integers, minus k will also belong to the set of integers. So d is also dividing minus a. So d is dividing, when d is dividing a, d also divides minus a. That's why if d divides a, d divides mod a. That divides both the values actually. Got it? So this was everything about divisibility. Clear? Now let us talk about division. Divisibility is basically the property that a number divides another number. Are you getting my point? Divisibility and division have a great difference. Divisibility is a property, division is a process. Got it? Division is what? You are dividing a cake into 6 parts. Okay, that process of dividing is division. Let me drink some water actually. Okay, so you are dividing a cake into 6 parts. That process is division. And you can divide a cake into 6 parts. You can divide a cake into 6 parts. This phenomenon is divisibility. Okay, this proposition of, or this this statement, this truthfulness that you can divide a cake into 6 parts, that this truthfulness is called divisibility. Are you getting my point, guys? So now we have learned about divisibility. So now we will be talking about division. So let's see. Division. Okay, so any positive integer n can be written in the form ka plus b. Okay, or better to be conventionally writing this as n is equals to qa plus b. These things have a number of terms. So n is called a dividend, a is called a divisor, q is called a quotient, and r is called a remainder. These things you people have already learnt in junior classes, right? Dividend, divisor, quotient, and remainder. Got it? Acha. So for a and b being the quotient and remainder, they are basically always unique for a particular integer n. Okay, so there cannot exist two quotient and two different remainders, or more than one rather, for one particular integer if the divisor is same. Clear? I mean to say that n cannot be written in q1a plus r1 and also as q2a plus r2, where q1 not equals to q2 and r1 not equals to r2. Got it? This thing is not possible. You can only express this in one way, when the dividend and divisor are constant. Okay. Achha, one of the main properties, let me prove this also. So proving this is quite easy. Let contradiction method we will be using. So let n is equals to q1a plus r1 and n is equals to q2a plus r2. We can subtract them. So q1 minus q2a is equals to r1 minus r2. Okay, now r1 is not equals to r2 by assumption. Okay, because if r1 was equals to r2, then it is actually the theorem or the statement itself that the remainders will not be unique. Okay, so will not be unique actually means that r1 equal to, so we are going to prove that. So here we are assuming that they are not unique, they are different. So R1 not equals to R2. So R1, so let R1 be greater than R2 without loss of generality. Without loss of generality actually means that if you would have considered R2 greater than R1, then it would be causing no effect in the mathematics. Got it? So R1 greater than R2, uh, basically that will mean that, see, so from here we can say that A divides R1 minus R2. Clear? A divides R1 minus R2. So what does that mean? What does that mean? So that basically means that A is less than equals to R1 minus R2. A is less than equals to R1 minus R2. Got it? Clear? Achha, now there is a slight glitch. Okay. Now what is that glitch? See, what happens is that basically your 0, I mean your R1, R2, these two will always be less than A. R1, R2, I mean these will always be less than the divisor. Okay. R1, R2 values will always be less than the divisor. I will explain it to you why. I will be explaining it to you why they will always be less than the divisor. First, let us first, understand the concept. Okay. I will tell you, just now I will tell you. So, okay. So now, what does that mean? That means that our assumption actually contradicts. Okay. That actually R1 and R2, if both are less than A, so their subtraction will also be less than A. But here we are telling that A is less than that. So basically our condition, our assumption is actually contradicting. That means ki R1 must be equals to R2, because R1 not equals to R2 is contradicting our assumption, right? Giving you a wrong conclusion. So R1 equals to R2 is the only possible option left to us. Furthermore, if R1 equals to R2, then Q1 minus Q2 times A will be equal to 0. Got it? And A cannot be equal to 0 because A is the divisor here. So Q1 minus Q2 is equals to 0. That implies that Q1 equals to Q2. Got it? Clear? Okay. Acha. Now, why is actually this your divisor will always be greater than the remainder? Okay. The proof of this particular statement, just see. So you have that your A is BQ plus R. Clear? So A is actually BQ plus R. So now, see, from here you can write that Q as the least integer function of A by B. Okay. Q as the least integer function of A by B, and from here you can actually, the inequality of A by B, that A by B minus 1 less than equals to A by B, and it is less than actually A. Clear? Sorry, B. Sorry. Or A by B actually. A by B. Not B, A by B. Sorry. So the equality is behind. Okay. So from here actually you can say that A by B minus 1 is less than equals to, here the number is equals to A is equals to BQ plus R. Clear? So from here you get that Q less than A by B. So when you simplify the sides, and after simplification you can do it on your own. So from here actually get that A minus B, here you have BQ, then here you have A. So then you can give the minus sign here. So this is your BQ actually, so you need to change it to minus BQ. Got it? So, or you can do it in this way, that basically from here you can write BQ, which is BQ minus A less than 0. Clear? And from here what you get is that 0 0 less than equals to a minus bq, sorry, a minus bq less than b. What is a minus bq? You are changing the inequality sign when you are changing the sign of the integers. What is a minus bq? From here you can see that a minus bq is nothing but r. So basically 0 less than equals to r. This is the inequality of r. That's why r will always be less than the divisor. We use the same thing here only. So r will be less than the divisor. Okay. So basically we are keeping this lecture up till this much. In the next lecture we will be talking about the GCD. Clear? So meet you guys in the next lecture.